Hello and welcome to the Curiosity and Consciousness podcast. The intention of this podcast is to help you to open your mind, get curious about yourself and raise your consciousness levels. Through these conversations, we hope that you will go on an inward journey to discover the truth of who you are and become the conscious creator of your life. I am your host, Karen Maloney, and I work as an inside-out coach, mentor and guide, helping women to revolutionize their internal chatter and create a life they love. Listen to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or whatever platform you choose. And be sure to like, subscribe, review, and share the podcast. Check out my website as well, soulpowerlight.com, for more info. Hello everybody, it's me, Karen Maloney. I am back with you for another brilliant conversation. But before we jump in, just a reminder again, if you wish to join my mailing list, please go to my Instagram handle at soulpowerlight, click the link in the bio and it is top of the list. And don't worry, I don't clog up your inbox. So then, back to today's guest, and today joining me is Milagros Phillips, who is a keynote speaker, TEDx presenter, 4 times author and certified coach. She designs strategic learning programs for organizations seeking to enhance their diversity, equity and inclusion initiatives through race literacy. Her programs use history, science, research and storytelling to create compelling, life-transforming experiences. For more than 35 years, Milagros has consulted, designed and facilitated programs across many industries. She is an artist, a Reiki master and teacher, a sound therapist, teacher of a course in miracles and the creator of Race Demystified, a compassionate approach to healing from racial conditioning. Her latest book, Cracking the Healer's Code, was released in August, and she is also the recipient of the 2021 New Thought Walden Award for Interfaith Intercultural Understanding. I really enjoyed connecting with Milagros for this conversation about race, and I feel like there is so much more to explore in this topic, but I believe Milagros gave a foundational or some basic pointers on racism and understanding it and how it is institutionalized and systemic and internalized, and how we're often not conscious of our racial behaviors. She also talks about perspectives and how the white community and the black community have different automatic assumptions when it comes to the likes of what we've seen in the news and the likes of George Floyd being killed by a police officer. So it's really interesting, and we even touch on some of the Irish immigrants and the reason why they were accepted by American society. And Milagros is known as the race healer because she brings so much more to the conversation and the bigger picture, and she talks a lot about compassion and healing from the inside out and healing as a global family or a global village, because we're all involved in one way or another. And it is about coming back to that wholeness. As she says, war begets war and violence begets violence. So it's never the solution, but it's about changing our own state of consciousness as well and moving out of the conditioning that has broken us up. So lots in this conversation, and she leaves with some really beautiful, powerful messages at the end, which are really, really nice reminders of us all that, we are all more than enough. There is no single person better or worse than anyone else. We are all more than enough, but it is part of the journey as well to heal and come back to this remembrance, both individually and also collectively. So a fabulous conversation. I'm sure you'll get lots from it. And if you want to find out more on Milagros' work or her books, you can go to her website, Milagros Phillips, that's MilagrospHillips, milagrosphillips.com. But as always as well, I will have everything on the show notes on my website, soulpowerlight.com. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for tuning in as always and joining me for another episode. And this week I have another wonderful guest. So, first of all, Milagros Phillips, you're very welcome and thanks for joining today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you as well today. And just first of all, like I was just telling you there, I love your name, Milagros, because that actually means miracles in Spanish. So, what a beautiful name as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My mother was pretty good with the names. Like she named my sister Celeste Aurora,
Oh, wow.
celestial lights. Yeah. And
Wow,
she
that
named
is
me
amazing.
Milagros Altagracia, which means miracle of the highest grace.
Well, I'm sure it's not just, there's much more to a name as well. So I'm sure in some sense in through your work in your life, you must embody that energy as well. And we'll get into that. And I know you do so much incredible work around race and demystifying race. And you've a new book out as well. And I'm sure we'll get into all that as well as you're a wonderful energy healer and Reiki and a teacher of A Course in Miracles. So I love it all. But I'd love for you to set the scene for us a little and describe a little bit about your background and really what led you in this direction as well.
Sure. Yeah. I actually got my calling when I was 13 years old, the day that Dr. King died.
Mm.
I locked myself in the bathroom to cry because I was so upset and I didn't want my father to know that I was crying. And and he kept knocking on the door and going, "You okay in there?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm fine." But I was just sobbing. And suddenly I heard a voice that said, "You're to continue the work." And I had no idea what that
Wow.
meant, but what I did know at 13 was somebody just got killed for doing that. So no, I'm not doing it.
Mm.
And so so I resisted my calling for a lot of years, and then eventually, we call it a calling for a reason, right? It keeps calling you back until you finally say yes. And I've never looked back. I mean, I've been doing this work now for 35 years, 35 plus years, and I love it. And it's taken me on a journey of personal healing and transformation that has been quite extraordinary. And so that's, yeah, so I just, I guess I came in to do this work
Mm.
and to be here at this time to do this work. Because for
Wow.
many years, people just were not even, I mean, you couldn't even get people to talk about race. And then since last year, suddenly people are waking up, they are conscious, they're looking to learn more, and, they're looking to become race literate, which is
Mhm.
really important. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Well, with a name like Milagros and a calling like that, that is pretty epic. So well done, you. And well, like you mentioned there as well, it wasn't a topic that was really approachable or to be talked about, but now is the time. And what are some of and you mentioned race literacy as well there. So what does that mean? And what are some of the essential conversations that we all need to be having now?
Sure. So, race literacy is the awareness of the history of race, a deeper understanding of that history because we didn't get that history in school,
Mm.
an awareness of the ways in which race has been institutionalized, how it's systemic, how we have all internalized it, and it's sort of become personal, and so that we're no longer conscious of our what I would call racial behaviors
Mm.
in our everyday lives, our conversations, in our actions, reactions, and interactions with one another. And really, race literacy is also the awareness of the ways in which what we have internalized and the ways in which race has been institutionalized impacts us on a daily basis in our daily lives, not just people of color, but all people. And so, hence the need for healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's really important there as well, what you mentioned about it being institutionalized and systemic. And this is the truth of so many things. Like they're passed on generationally and without really questioning or thinking about it, we're just taught these patterns and behaviors. So I'd love for you to touch on that a little bit more. And even how you mentioned, they're these kind of not conscious behaviors that we may have all different people. So, what would some of those be to help people to begin to maybe awaken or wake up to their own behaviors or things that they may hold within them?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So let's say something happens and you see this news and the news says that the a policeman killed a black man, which we've seen
Hmm.
a lot, and certainly when Mr. George Floyd was killed last year, it changed everything because people became really conscious of, wow, this really is a problem. Like
Hmm.
people of color have been talking about that as a problem for a long time. But let's say you see that on television. The first thing that happens with, and everybody looks at it from their perspective, because one of the things that the conditioning has done is that the conditioning is around the same topic, but everybody absorbed it differently. So white people absorbed it one way, black people absorbed it another way, brown people absorbed it another way, indigenous people, and it depends on the trauma that is affiliated with that particular subject, right? And so this announcement has been made and now everybody knows about it. White people will immediately go to, what did he do wrong? What did that person must have done something wrong? Because for them, the police comes after them when they do something wrong, right?
Mm.
But in the black community, that's not the case. The police can just come after you, period, the end.
Mm.
Okay. And so, so the perception is, so then a person of color watching it is going, oh my God, you know, that person's probably going to lose their lives, because that's, a lot of times that's what people see and that's what they experience. And so you see that people are looking at the same thing, but they're looking at it through their own filters,
Mhm.
through the filters of their experiences. And one of the things that is so important about healing and transformation is peeling away the layers so that we can see a human being rather than somebody who has done something wrong or somebody who's good or somebody who's bad, or it's like, can we just see that a human being has been violated, as opposed to, because this person is a certain color, the assumption is they must have done something wrong.
Yes, and how sad that is. Um, I'd love to get into some of the conversation as well as of what is needed in order to heal that, because or
Mhm.
why is it in one sense that people of color still struggle so much? Because I know, again, like you mentioned, racism, we're all affected at different stages. I know for me, maybe being Irish, not so much now, but I know some of my ancestors, when they had to immigrate and go to other countries, they were called all sorts of names and the fighting Irish, and they weren't really wanted for a long time as well, but
Mhm.
we've recovered from that. But
Mhm.
why, or what is needed or necessary now to help people of color to recover as well and to come into a new level of consciousness? We all need to open up the conversation.
hmm Yeah, so let's talk about the Irish people for a minute, because again, it's, like where do we begin our level of understanding, right? So
Mm.
let's talk about the Irish when they first started to arrive to the United States.
Mhm.
And Irish had been coming to this country practically alongside the English for a while, but there was a huge influx in the 1800s, a
Mhm.
couple of times, in the 1830s and in the late 1800s and early 1900s. Um, and those people came to the US, and there would be signs in the stores like, we're looking to hire someone, right? And then it would say, right next to it, it would say Nina, Nina, which meant no Irish need apply, or no Italians need apply, because those people were not going to get hired. And at the time that they came to this country, they were not considered white. They were considered foreigners, and they
Okay.
actually were considered people of color. They were
Mm.
not considered white. Whiteness was something that was bestowed upon the Irish when they became part of this bigger thing that the US government had put together, which was the everybody had to assimilate. And in order to assimilate, you had to lose your accent. And for the Italians, they had to stop speaking Italian. Some people had to change their names in order to assimilate, because it was all about assimilation. And it was assimilation with the Anglo Saxon way of life and the Anglo Saxon whites that were here in this country. And so as a person who had light skin, the Irish could do that within one generation. They could become American. They could be Americanized because they could, they were white. And until you open your mouth, no one can hear your accent, right? If they're just looking at you, right?
Mhm.
And so you're a white person, so you could assimilate. Black and brown people and indigenous people could not assimilate. They could not assimilate, even
Mhm.
though they had been here for way longer than the Irish. The African Americans were being enslaved in this country as early as the 1600s.
Mm.
So hundreds of years before the large influx of Irish people started coming here. And yet they were not considered American citizens because they could not assimilate, and they could not assimilate because of the color of their skin. So so the African Americans pretty much helped to build this country. We're talking they were farmers, they were enslaved laborers, okay? But they were laborers. They were working from
Mhm.
sun up to sundown and sometimes beyond that. They built the buildings. They helped to build the railroads along with the Chinese when they were building railroads. They created art, music, all kinds of things before the Irish came to this country.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the Irish, because they had light skin, were able to take, quote unquote, their proper place in society, even though they hadn't earned it. And they could just come in and take that place. They didn't have to work for it or anything else. Okay. By taking that place, I'm talking about they could become citizens, they could buy homes, they could do all of these things once they had assimilated. And so they were able to do that within one generation.
Mhm.
The Italians were able to do it within one generation. Black people can't do that because Black people are not white. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's so, like you say, it's the importance of opening up the conversation again and remembering and looking back at history and
Hmm.
realizing, the truth. Well, I mean, it's really horrible and unfortunate. A lot of people know about Indigenous and how they're have been wiped out and are being continue to wipe out to this day. But we often forget, about people of color that, like you say, they were there as well beforehand. And
Hmm.
especially, well, it's my thing as well with America that I really don't like. It's meant to be this great, incredible country, but yet it's disregarding and throwing aside some of its own people. So
Hmm. Its own
how
history.
its own
Its own
history, exactly,
history.
like you
Yeah.
say, the hands, the
Yeah.
laborers that built the country in the first place,
Hmm.
and so, how do we begin, or what have you seen shift, especially from the last year and George Floyd and all the different events and Black Lives Matters? What have you seen as a shift, or what is your hope in the conversation and in the healing that's necessary going forward?
Yeah. So one of the things that's happened is more and more people who were not aware of this history are opening themselves up and
Mm.
are willing to learn and to grow and to become more conscious about the ways in which they have absorbed the dysfunction.
Mhm.
And more people are willing to um, to understand that this is a problem for all of us. I always tell people that racism is a problem for people of color. It is not the problem of people of
Mm.
color. So the white community needs to open itself up to its own history, to become aware of the history of violence that they've not been able to reconcile with, to understand that we've all been traumatized, including them, and as a result, they continue to traumatize other people. And the importance of knowing that we're one human family.
Mhm.
And as one human family, we need to heal together as a global village because this has affected everyone and continues to affect all of us. There's also a deeper understanding that's needed about the historical context because a lot of people go, well, my family came to the US long after slavery, my family were not slave owners, or things like that, when in reality this history is so much bigger than slavery, so much bigger. But for the most part, what we learn, the little bit that we do learn in school, is about the civil rights movement and slavery. Well, nobody's telling us where all of that stuff came from, how all of this was institutionalized in Europe and then exported throughout the world, including Ireland and Scotland and all of these other places. Like,
Mhm.
there's this lack of knowledge and awareness about the bigger global history of the human family and how all of this stuff came about and how some of those laws are still in place today. We're talking about laws that existed that were put in place in the 1400s. And we are all, as a human community, living under those laws. And if we are not aware of them, we can't rescind them. And if we can't rescind them, as long as they're available, they will be used over and over and over again against humanity. And so that's why it's so important to become race literate, to become aware of, the institutional and systemic racism that we are all living under.
Oh, it's so horrifying. What are some of the laws that you mentioned? What are examples of some of them?
So, for instance, when we had the influx of Europeans, the Irish and the Italians started arriving here in the um, mid to late 1800s, early 1900s, there was something called the Land Act that was put together by the US government. And the Land Act meant that Native Americans had to move and leave their land, and make room for the newly arrived Europeans. So that meant, and a lot of people know it as the Trail of Tears, right? Like people were moved out of their homeland and made to go somewhere else to make room for the Europeans that were newly arrived and were settling in the East Coast and then moving out west into the country. But no one ever talks about what allowed for that to happen. And what allowed for that to happen were laws that were put in place in the 1400s. In 1493, when Columbus went back to Spain, because he had um, gone into Quisqueya, which is also known as La Española, which is also known as the Dominican Republic. When he went there, and there was food and gold and silver and precious stones, and he found all this immense wealth that the natives had, but the natives had a different value for those things than the Europeans did. He burned, looted, and did whatever he had to do to take all of as much of that wealth back to Spain to prove that he had found a new route to India. Not only that, but he also wanted to prove that he had found India.
Mhm.
And so he took some Tainos with him, who were the original people that were there on that island that they called Quisqueya. So he goes back to Spain. And very quickly, word spread that, there's gold in them, their islands, you know what I mean? And so all of these European countries, when some of them had been colonized, I mean, for a while, like for instance, the Portuguese, in fact, the law that I'm going to quote was made originally for Portugal. But all of these countries suddenly started coming out and dividing amongst themselves, because remember, the monarchy were related, right? And so they started dividing among themselves these islands and countries along the equator. But they had already been colonizing Africa for a long time. So in the mid 1400s, the papacy gave consent to Portugal to colonize along the coast of the western coast of Africa, to sail down the coast of Africa and colonize, kill, subdue, take the possessions from, and enslave the human beings that were living there, and turned whoever was left into Catholics, because they were trying to turn the entire world to Catholicism. So they created something called the Doctrine of Discovery. And the doctrine of discovery was, as I said, created originally for the Prince of Portugal, but it was revised several times during the mid 1400s. And when Columbus went back in 1493 with all this gold and all this and food, because remember, Europeans were malnutrition, they were starving. You only have 3 months to grow your food. Most of them were poor. The only people who had anything were the monarchy and the papacy and the people who work with them, and everybody else. So you had two tiers of economy. There were the wealthy and the poor. And some of those poor were slaves, because a lot of people don't realize that there were slaves in Europe. Some of them were indentured, which means you could buy yourself out of slavery, which is something that you cannot do if you're a perpetual slave, which is what the doctrine of discovery says, to turn those people into perpetual slaves. And it was everyone and anyone who was not Catholic, which meant the Hindus, the Jews, the Islams, the pagans, the Druids, and all people who had religions that were based in nature were under the doctrine of discovery, which meant that their land was considered terra nulla. Terra nulla means that there's nobody there.
Mm.
So, in other words, there are human bodies living there, but they don't count as humans. And so these Europeans can come in and take the land and do whatever they wanted to do, because they had the consent of the papacy. So one might say, well, wow, that was in the 1400s. That law still exists today. The doctrine of discovery is an international law that we are all living under. And that law was basically said that you can take the land, the property, and everything and anything that belongs to people who were not Catholic. Notice I'm very specific here. I'm not saying Christians, because eventually it became Christians, but originally it was who was not Catholic. I mean, you could be burned at the stake in Europe if you were not Catholic. Okay. And so, and I was raised as a Catholic child. So this was really difficult for me. And so you have this law, but you could say that, well, that was in the 1400s. The thing is, that law has never been rescinded, and we're still living under that law. The last time that law was used, it's been used continually. And as I said, that was the law that led to the displacement of the natives and under law. Okay. And so that law has been used continually in Asia, in Australia, in North, Central, South America, in the Caribbean. It's an international law. And here's the thing about it. The last time that law was used in the continental USA was 2005, when Justice Ginsburg used the doctrine of discovery, to win a case against the Oneida Nation in New York. And so to say that this stuff happened yesterday is not affecting us today, it really is a show of how little we know about our history. And if we don't understand what happened yesterday and how yesterday is impacting our today, we can never, never change our tomorrow. And that is what healing is about. Healing is about changing what is hurting, what is dysfunctional, what is causing a problem, to something that is whole and complete and is founded in justice and in peace.
Yeah. So important. And yeah, like you say, it's really, really hard to change anything when we're not really willing to look at the truth of it and to allow the emotions and that energy to express, in order to transmute or change it into something else, to create a new future, to bring in a new consciousness, whatever it is. And I'd love to talk about that energy side of things a little bit as well. But I'd love to know your own personal experience of how it's been for you in your life, being a woman of color in the United States, knowing your calling from a very young age, and how it was, before, to talk about these topics and to do your work, and maybe if there's been some kind of a change or a renewed hope for you in the last year or year and a half or so.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Huge renewed hope, because people with whom first of all, I never shut up. Nobody can shut me up. I, I mean, I come from a family where, people spoke up. If there was something wrong, we would say something, or we would, we'd have discussions about it. And, there was never anything hidden. Right.
Wow, that's rare.
And
That's
so
pretty rare.
I learned that, I don't shut up. And I took a couple of smacks in the mouth for telling my parents exactly what I thought of them at specific times when I was a teenager. And so I just, so I've always been one to speak up, and I spoke up at school about things that were wrong and blah, blah, blah. Right. But race was very specific. And race, obviously racism affected my life, in that, there
Mhm.
were times that it was so obvious that I didn't get the job because of who I was. You'd have one conversation on the phone, and then you show up and suddenly, they're considering somebody else for the position, and blah blah blah. So I had a lot of those kinds of experiences as a young woman. And also, when I finally said, I used to do diversity work.
Mm.
Diversity is about including everybody and everything and blah blah blah, right? And it's great work, and I still love it. But what I realized was that I would always end up talking about race. And so eventually I just said yes to, the fact that, wait a minute, this is really where the juice is for me. This is where
Mm.
my heart is. This is where I feel like I can make a difference. And this is where my spirit has brought me through a lot of different experiences that I can use as a foundation for helping others to understand. And so my training really was about how to self-care.
Mm.
So when I finally said yes to my calling, the first thing that started to happen was these books would land in somehow in my life, right? And they were books that were like, books by Catherine Ponder, who was she was a Christian writer, and she wrote all these interesting books. Books by Annalise Garin, who was excommunicated from the Mormon Church for writing a series of 8 life transforming books. And so I started where I was. I was raised Catholic, so I started in that realm, looking at how do you change your life from more of a Christian perspective. And as I started growing and changing and transforming, I began to look deeper at, well, what are the dynamics? And then I started to look at the science and look at the field, and the more of that bigger, more of the physics part of this stuff. And I had been trained as a singer when I was a child because I wanted to be an opera singer.
Mm.
And so I began to use my voice out of the blues to help people change states of consciousness, to heal things in their bodies, and to do all that kind of work. And so I really was brought to the work of race through the back door. And for me, the back door, I mean, well, it's actually the front door, right? Uh, because that's the learning about the greater part of the self, so
Mm.
that would then drive the work that I was doing. And so that meant that I had to go through my own spiritual awakening around this stuff. And that spiritual awakening included things that I just wasn't buying.
Mm.
Like, what do you mean that white people are also suffering from race, because of racism? Like, that didn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? Like, and so my spirit brought me through lessons and understandings of how they too have been conditioned. And when you are conditioned, you no longer own your power,
Mm.
because you are being run by the condition that conditioned you. Right. And so it's like all this, like these really deep lessons before I actually really started to move into doing this work, because the piece that was missing, that was really needed in order for all of us as a human family to heal from this stuff, was compassion. And so my spirit brought me through the learning and the understanding, so that I would have compassion,
Mm.
so that I would have more patience, so that I would be more loving in doing this work. Because there's a lot of doing of this race work from the energy of war, and war begets war, just like
Mm.
violence begets violence. And so what I was brought to do was to do this work from the energy of love, compassion, and peace. And from the energy of, we are one human family, one energy body, one connection.
Oh, amazing. I love that. And it's so funny. You've answered a question that was in my mind, to see how your background or your work, as well as a Reiki therapist and a sound therapist and a Course in Miracles, helped you in this work as well. But I think you've answered it there as well, in finding or connecting to that compassion, that oneness, that love, that peace. like you talk about in your website, healing from the inside out. And I call myself an inside out coach purely for that fact as
Ooh,
well,
I love it.
because of my own journey. I'm like, oh my God, everything needs to start within me,
Hmm.
to connect to this oneness, this truth, these levels within me first. So then I can share and, compart it with another. But without doing that, I can't do that. I don't have access to them. So I love that. And well, actually, that was really, really powerful as well. What you said, when you are conditioned, you no longer own your power. And I think that's huge and a massive transition. And what we're seeing a lot now that's going on in the world. And it's, coming back again internally to connecting to higher truths as well, to help us move out and heal on an individual and collective level. But then, and I know that's something you talk about a lot. Well, maybe that's not the way you word it, but finding wholeness again. And even in your book, maybe you'd like to talk about your book just for a couple of minutes, Cracking the Healer's Code. And it's a prescription for healing racism and finding wholeness.
Yeah, yeah, because so much of what the condition has done is it's broken us in a lot of ways, and we're not always conscious of it, but it just shows up in our lives, right? But the whole idea that human beings are not enough, that's what makes us broken. The
Yeah.
truth is we are more than enough, but we live in a world where there's just not enough. There's not enough housing, not enough food, not enough, in reality, there's more than plenty for everyone if we simply allow ourselves the sacred generosity that opens up the way for everyone to be able to bring forth their gifts and to be able to share who they are with the rest of the human family. But when we start blocking that because a person looks a certain way or has a specific disability, or they can't do this, and we start limiting people, what we do is we limit ourselves. And in order to limit another human being, you have to see yourself as limited, because it's here first, right? It's within us first. And so this book, Cracking the Healer's Code, is about facing the history, not hiding from it, not denying it, not pretending that it's something else or giving it a different narrative, but simply going, here's the history. This is the stuff that's conditioned us. This is where we've been conditioned. This is how we've been conditioned. But you are not that condition. Who we are as human beings is extraordinary. And without living out of that condition, who we live as is in what we live at is out of our wholeness. The truth that we are more than enough. We are more than enough to change the world. We are more than enough to make the world a better place. We are more than enough to allow our gifts to flow into this world so that everyone can benefit from those gifts. We are not here to be an island unto ourselves or one group over another. We are here to be one human family that shares our gifts with the other members of the human family so that we can all be whole. So, this book is a reminder that we are whole and that we can change this, that we have the power and the ability to change this. But in order to do that, we need to become conscious. We need to stay awake. We need to stay racially sober and racially aware. And we need to be able to ask ourselves, how am I being loving right now on a regular basis?
Love it. And it's so true, and again, I think we are in really difficult times as well, where so much of this
Mhm.
is coming up. It needs to come up to be seen, so many different aspects to really see the conditioning and not live in that fear of separation, because we have to see the darkness to reach the light. But
Mhm.
it's that connection, like you say, being conscious, being awake, connecting to ourselves first and foremost and asking, how am I being loving now, regularly, really are tools to help us as well to come back to that bigger truth that you've mentioned as
Mhm.
well, that we are just all one family. Our fear separates us, but when we get beyond that and transcend it, we actually see we're all special. We're all here. We're all creation. We're all
Mhm.
source, and we're all more than enough. And we're all meant to be here to be that one family again. So, so powerful. And just, is there anything coming up? Or I know that's a beautiful question that we can reflect on as well and ask ourselves regularly. Is there anything else coming up that you'd like to share in how we're all being called now to reach higher or deeper within ourselves. Are there any other tools or steps you could share to leave with people as well?
Sure, yeah. And it's a remembering that the body makes a chemistry for everything. And we can make a loving chemistry or we can make a chemistry of fear. And if we are living in a consciousness of continual fear, we're denying ourselves the truth of who we are. Human beings are not fear. We feel fearful and we experience fear from time to time. When I say fear, I'm talking about negative energy, anger and frustration and all of those things. Those are all part of the human experience. And we've been given those things to express. But we've not been given those as a home where we live. That is not our home. Our natural home is love. All you have to do is look at nature. All you have to do is focus on the air that surrounds you. And you notice if you just get quiet, that air contains perpetual peace. We disturb that peace with the way that we interact with the world, or we connect with it and we continue to flow peace within ourselves. So we have choice. We have choice. We can choose the consciousness we're going to live under. And if you truly want to have a peaceful life, then you need to continually choose peace. You need to find a way to get yourself back into that state of peace as soon as you possibly can. That doesn't mean we won't be made uncomfortable or have difficult situations. But what it does mean is that we become aware that we are not the situation. Who and what we are is enormous, so much bigger than any of the issues that we face as a human family. And that we can, as a human family, resolve them, not in pockets all by ourselves, but by coming together.
Beautiful, beautiful. What a beautiful and powerful message to end on. And yeah, I love that reminder again that we do have the choice, and it is our choice, all of us, individually and collectively, to choose the consciousness that we wish to live in. And it's an invitation for us all again to do that work and connect within. So what a wonderful, beautiful conversation, Milagros. It's been a pleasure. And please share where listeners can find more about your work.
Sure, they can go to milagrosphillips.com, which is my name.com, and you can click on courses. We have some wonderful courses coming up on a regular basis that you can engage in. We have town halls where we just invite everyone and anyone to join us, where we have conversations, and we are growing as a human family. And as we call it the Race Healer family. And so you can find me there. All of my books, I have 4 books out. This is the book that you mentioned earlier, Cracking the Healer's Code, is the latest book, and you can get that on Amazon. And if you get my books, I would ask that if you please go ahead and leave a review about the book. That would be very helpful, because we're trying to get this work out into the world. And that's one of the ways that you can support what we're doing. I hope you'll join us in our conversations that we have.
Fabulous. Thank you. And as always, I will link everything on the show notes from my website as well. And, we haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg of this conversation. Maybe we'll get to have more again at another time. But thank you so much for joining and sharing today.
Thank you so much, Karen, for inviting me.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you get notified every time a new show is released. Get more information on this week's guest as well on my website, www.soulpowerlight.com.